It felt like the first morning of spring. The early sun was chasing the mist from the wooded hollows that sheltered the small streams flowing busily down to the river Vézère. Drops of dew sparkled on the new buds that seemed to have appeared overnight on the bare trees. The air smelled somehow different, fresh and hopeful, and enlivened by the tuneful notes of a dozen different bird songs. Excited by the change in scents and season, even after his early morning walk through the woods, Gigi, the basset hound, thrust his nose at the open window of the small police van that descended the steep and curving lane from his master's home. At the wheel, Bruno was singing a half-remembered song about springtime in Paris and vaguely thinking of the duties of the day that stretched before him, when rounding the last bend he was suddenly forced to brake. For the first time in his memory, the quiet road ahead was blocked with a line of cars and tractors, their engines running and their drivers' heads poking from windows. Some were out of their cars, looking at the road that led to Saint-Denis. Several were talking urgently into cell phones. In the distance, a car horn sounded, swiftly joined by others in discordant chorus. As Bruno surveyed the scene, his own phone began to ring. He checked the screen, recognized the name of Pierre, a neighbor who lived farther up the road. He ignored it, assuming Pierre would be calling to complain at being stuck in the jam ahead. There had to be an accident of some sort. Bruno pushed aside the thought that he could have avoided this delay if he'd stayed the night with Pamela, the Englishwoman he'd been seeing since the autumn. She'd called off the arrangement that he would dine with her and stay the night, saying she'd finally secured an early morning appointment with the Maréchal, the travelling farrier who was to reshoe her horses. Pamela postponed their meetings too frequently for Bruno's comfort, and he was never quite sure whether she was cooling on their relationship or simply wary of commitment. They were to meet again that evening, he reminded himself, without feeling greatly reassured. He parked the van and climbed out to investigate. The best view of the long traffic jam was commanded by Alain, who kept a dairy farm farther up the road to Les Aisies. "Geese! The road's full of ducks and geese," he called down to Bruno from his perch high on a tractor. "They're all over the place." Bruno heard the sound of rival honking as the geese called back in response to the car horns, and he quickly clambered up beside Alain to peer ahead. The traffic jam stretched as far up the road as he could see. Darting between the stalled cars were perhaps hundreds of ducks and geese streaming through the woods on the side of the road and heading across it to settle in a broad pond that spread across the meadow, swollen by the spring rains. "That's Louis Villat's farm, behind those woods," said Alain. "A tree must have come down and broken his fence, let them all escape. There's over 3,000 birds in there, or rather, there used to be. Looks like he's lost a few to the cars, too." "Have you got his number?" Bruno asked. Alain nodded. "Call him, see if he knows his birds have escaped. Then go through those woods and see if you can help Louis block the gap in his fence. I'll try and sort this out here. Join you later." Bruno went back to his van, released Gigi, and walked with him down the road, brushing aside the driver's angry queries. A driver he knew was looking mournfully at a broken headlamp while a wounded goose lay half-pinned under his car, honking feebly. "You grew up on a farm, Pierre," Bruno told him, rushing past. "Put the poor devil out of its misery." Looking back, he saw Pierre bend to grip the goose behind its head and twist. The bird fluttered wildly and then went limp. Even when the farm boy grew up like Pierre to work in an accountant's office, he hadn't lost the skill. When he came to the main grouping of birds, advancing in a jumbled column from the woods, Bruno saw that the road ahead was blocked by some stopped cars coming the other way. He briefly considered using Gigi to turn the birds back, but they would go off and cross the road elsewhere. There was no stopping this exodus, so he might as well try to speed it up and clear the road.